The worn leather of Beatrice Crawford's reticule felt lighter than air as she stood on the dusty platform of Fort Kearny, Nebraska, her fingers clutching the emptiness where her life savings should have been. Behind her lay Philadelphia and the ruins of what she had believed was love. Ahead stretched an endless expanse of prairie grass and uncertainty, and somewhere in those distant mountains waited a man named Finn Fletcher, who had placed an advertisement for a wife in the matrimonial news. She smoothed the wrinkled paper for the 100th time since leaving Pennsylvania 3 weeks prior, reading the simple words that had seemed like divine intervention when she discovered them the morning after Charles had disappeared with everything she owned. Seeking honest woman for companionship and marriage. Must be strong of spirit. Mountain living. Write to Finn Fletcher, care of Fort Kearny. The brevity had appealed to her shattered heart. No flowery promises or declarations that could prove false. The September wind of 1873 carried the scent of grass and distance as Beatrice gathered her single carpetbag and stepped down from the platform. Fort Kearny bustled with activity despite the lateness of the afternoon, soldiers and settlers in freight wagons creating a constant motion that made her head spin after the long train journey. She had written to Finn Fletcher from Philadelphia, explaining her situation with careful honesty, leaving out only the most humiliating details of how thoroughly Charles Whitmore had deceived her. His response had been brief but clear. Come to Fort Kearny. Ask for directions to Fletcher's trading post 15 miles northwest. Someone would know the way. You look lost, miss. A woman's voice cut through her thoughts, and Beatrice turned to find a sturdy figure in a practical calico dress studying her with knowing eyes. Let me guess you are here for one of those matrimonial arrangements? Heat flooded Beatrice's cheeks, but she lifted her chin. I am meeting Finn Fletcher. Do you know him? The woman's expression shifted to something between surprise and respect. Fletcher? Well, that is unexpected. He comes into town maybe 4 times a year, trades furs and game, buys supplies, then disappears back into those mountains. I did not know he was looking for a wife. She extended a weathered hand. Martha Henderson. My husband runs the general store, Beatrice Crawford. The handshake was firm, grounding. The advertisement said to ask for directions once I arrived. Martha's eyes swept over Beatrice's travel-stained dress, the careful mending visible at the cuffs, the quality of fabric that spoke of better days. You have been through something, have you not? Well, Fletcher is a good man from what I know, keeps to himself but honest in his dealings. The problem is getting to his place. It is not an easy ride and the sun is already heading down. Beatrice's stomach clenched. She had spent the last of her money on train fare and a single meal in Omaha. The thought of paying for lodging was impossible. I can walk. If you give me directions, walk? Girl, it is 15 miles of rough terrain and there are wolves in those hills. Martha shook her head decisively. You will stay with us tonight. Tomorrow I will find someone heading that direction who can give you a ride. Fletcher usually comes to town once the weather starts turning, so he might even show up in the next day or two if you wanted to wait. The kindness was unexpected, and Beatrice felt her throat tighten with gratitude. I cannot pay you. Did I ask for payment? Martha's tone was brisk but not unkind. Come on then, before my husband starts wondering if I got trampled by a freight wagon. The Henderson store occupied a sturdy building on the main street, its shelves stocked with everything from flour to firearms. Martha's husband, a quiet man named Robert, barely looked up from his ledger when his wife announced they had a guest, simply nodding toward the back where their living quarters waited. Beatrice found herself settled at a simple table with hot coffee and fresh bread, the first real meal she had eaten in days. So tell me, Martha said, settling across from her with her own cup, what brings a Philadelphia girl to the Nebraska wilderness? And do not tell me it is for the scenery. The story spilled out before Beatrice could stop it, perhaps because Martha's eyes held no judgment, only the patience of someone who had seen enough of life to understand its cruelties. Charles Whitmore, the bank clerk who had courted her for 6 months with pretty words and promises of marriage. The way he had convinced her to withdraw her savings, everything her father had left her when he died, to invest in a business opportunity that would secure their future. How she had woken one morning to find him gone, her money gone, and a landlady demanding rent she could no longer pay. I was a fool, Beatrice finished, her voice steady despite the shame burning in her chest. I believed every word he said. You trusted someone you loved. That does not make you a fool, it makes you human. Martha refilled her coffee cup. What made you choose Fletcher's advertisement? It was honest. Beatrice wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic. No grand promises, no declarations. Just a simple request for someone strong of spirit. After Charles, I wanted truth, even if it was harsh. Martha studied her for a long moment. Fletcher will give you truth. The man does not know how to lie, from what I have seen, but mountain living is hard, Beatrice. Winters up there can bury a cabin in snow for months. You will be isolated, working from dawn to dark, just to survive. Are you prepared for that? I was a fool once for pretty words and easy promises. Beatrice met her eyes steadily. I would rather face an honest hardship than a comfortable lie. Then you might do just fine. Martha smiled, the first real warmth breaking through her practical exterior. Come on, I will show you where you can sleep. Tomorrow we will get you up that mountain. The night passed in restless fragments, Beatrice's mind churning with possibilities and fears. What if Finn Fletcher took one look at her and found her wanting? What if she had escaped one disaster only to walk into another? But beneath the worry ran a thread of something else, something she had not felt since before Charles destroyed her faith in the world. Hope morning brought clear skies and Martha's determined energy. She fed Beatrice a substantial breakfast, then marched her down to the livery where a weathered man named Joe was preparing a wagon for a supply run. Joe, this is Beatrice Crawford. She needs to get to Fletcher's place. You pass within a mile of there, do you not? Joe scratched his grizzled beard, eyes assessing Beatrice with the calculation of someone used to measuring worth. Might do. Fletcher expecting you? Yes. Beatrice kept her voice firm. I wrote to him from Philadelphia. He told me to come. Huh. Joe spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Never thought I would see the day Fletcher took a wife. Sure you know what you are getting into, miss. That man lives like a grizzly bear, up in those mountains all alone, I am sure. She was not really, but what choice did she have? Philadelphia held nothing but bad memories and worse prospects. The wagon ride took most of the day, jolting over rough tracks that barely qualified as roads, climbing steadily into country that grew wilder with each passing mile. Joe was not much for conversation, which suited Beatrice fine. She watched the landscape change from prairie to rolling hills, thick with pine and aspen, creeks cutting silver lines through the autumn foliage. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache, so different from the crowded streets and brick buildings of her former life. Joe finally spoke, pointing toward a thin column of smoke rising from a valley between two ridges. Fletcher's place is up that way, maybe a mile. Path follows the creek. I got to continue on to the Johnson homestead, cannot take you all the way. Beatrice climbed down from the wagon, her legs stiff from the long ride. Thank you for bringing me this far. Joe nodded, then paused. Listen, miss. Fletcher is rough around the edges, but he is a good man. Helped pull my boy out of a frozen creek 2 winters back. Probably saved his life. You treat him fair, he will do right by you. Then he clicked to his horses, and the wagon rumbled away, leaving Beatrice alone with her carpetbag and the sound of moving water. The path was clear enough, winding beside a creek that chattered over smooth stones. Beatrice hoisted her bag and started walking, her heart beating faster with each step. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke and something wild she could not name. Birds called from the trees, and once she saw a deer watching her from a thicket before it bounded away in graceful leaps. The cabin appeared as she rounded a bend, and Beatrice stopped to stare. It was larger than she had expected, built of solid logs with a stone chimney and a covered porch running along the front. Several outbuildings stood nearby, including what looked like a smokehouse and a barn. Furs hung stretched on frames near the porch, and a woodpile that must have taken weeks to split stood neatly stacked against one wall. Everything spoke of competence and careful preparation. Movement caught her eye, and Beatrice's breath caught in her throat. A man emerged from the barn, and even at this distance she could see the breadth of his shoulders, the powerful build, evident in every movement. He wore buckskin trousers and a simple shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. His hair was dark and longer than fashionable, brushing his collar, and as he turned toward her she saw a face that was all hard angles and weathered tan. Finn Fletcher stopped when he spotted her, his body going still with an alertness that reminded her of the wild creatures she had glimpsed on the journey here. For a long moment they simply looked at each other across the clearing, and Beatrice felt the weight of this moment settle over her like a physical thing. This was the man who might become her husband, this stranger who lived like a legend in these remote mountains. Then he moved, crossing the distance between them with long strides that ate up the ground. Up close he was even more imposing. easily over 6 feet tall with shoulders that looked like they could carry an ox. His eyes were a startling blue against his tan skin, sharp and assessing as they swept over her. Beatrice Crawford? His voice was deep, rough from disuse, the kind of voice that rumbled in the chest. Yes, her own voice came out steadier than she felt. You are Finn Fletcher? I am. He glanced at her single bag and something flickered in his expression. You traveled light. I brought what I have. She would not lie to this man, would not pretend to be anything other than what she was. Charles Whitmore took everything else. Finn's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The man you mentioned in your letter. The one who stole from you, yes. The word tasted bitter. I was foolish enough to trust him. Trusting someone is not foolish. Stealing is. Finn reached for her carpetbag and Beatrice noticed the size of his hands, scarred and capable. You must be tired. Come inside, we can talk. The cabin's interior was scrupulously clean and surprisingly comfortable. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a good iron stove for cooking nearby. Shelves held supplies and equipment organized with military precision. Furs covered the plank floor, and the furniture, while simple, was well made and sturdy. A ladder led to what must be a sleeping loft above. Finn set her bag down and gestured to a chair at the solid wooden table. Sit, I will make coffee. Beatrice sank into the chair, watching as he moved around the cabin with economical grace despite his size. He filled a pot from a water bucket, added coffee grounds, and set it on the stove to heat. His movements were practiced, a man used to caring for himself. You live here alone? The question seemed obvious given what she had been told, but she needed to fill the silence. For the past 8 years. Finn leaned against the counter, his eyes on her. I came out here after the war, wanted distance from people and their foolishness. Built this place with my own hands. The war? Beatrice calculated quickly. The conflict had ended in 1865, 8 years ago, matched with his timeline. Fought for the Union. Saw things that made me want to forget what people could do to each other. His voice was matter of fact, but she heard the weight beneath the words. Mountains do not ask questions, do not lie, do not betray. Seemed like a better way to live. Then why seek a wife? The question came out before she could stop it. If you wanted isolation? Finn was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke his honesty was almost shocking. Because isolation is not the same as living. I am 30 years old, Beatrice. I built a good life here, but it is empty. I want a partner, someone to share the work and the seasons with. Maybe children eventually, if God wills it. I want a home, not just a shelter. The coffee began to boil and he poured 2 cups, setting one before her and taking the other for himself. He remained standing and Beatrice had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I should tell you what you are considering, he continued. This is hard country. Winter comes early and stays late. Some years we might be snowed in for weeks at a time. I trap and hunt for furs to sell, grow what food I can in summer, trade for the rest. It is constant work, from the time the sun rises until it sets. There are dangers, wild animals, and harsh weather and injury when you are miles from help. You would need to learn skills you probably never imagined back in Philadelphia. I am not afraid of work. Beatrice wrapped her hands around the warm cup. And I am not afraid of hardship, not anymore. Charles taught me that pretty words and comfortable lies are more dangerous than any honest struggle. Finn studied her and she felt the intensity of his gaze like a physical touch. Tell me about yourself. The letter only said so much, so Beatrice talked, and found herself being more honest than she had intended. She told him about growing up the daughter of a bookkeeper, learning to read and figure accounts at her father's knee, about her mother's death when she was 12, and how she had kept house for her father until he passed 3 years ago, about the inheritance that should have secured her future, and how Charles Whitmore had seemed like the answer to loneliness and uncertainty. I thought I loved him, she admitted, staring into her coffee. Or maybe I just loved the idea of not being alone. When he left, I felt like such a fool. All the signs were there, all the little inconsistencies I ignored because I wanted to believe him. What made you answer my advertisement instead of finding work in the city? Pride, maybe? Beatrice looked up at him. Or fear. Charles worked at a bank. He knew people, had connections. If I stayed, I would always be wondering if he was around some corner, if he would try to hurt me again. And the thought of living in some boarding house, working as a seamstress or a shop girl, always on the edge of poverty, always alone. Your advertisement offered something different, difficult but honest. Finn nodded slowly. I can promise you honesty, Beatrice. I will never lie to you, never steal from you, never raise a hand to you. But I cannot promise comfort or ease. This life will ask everything of you. I am here, am I not? She met his eyes steadily. I traveled over 1,000 miles based on a few lines in a newspaper. I am willing to try if you are. Something shifted in his expression, the hard lines softening almost imperceptibly. Then we should be clear about expectations. I am looking for a true partner, not a servant or a decoration. You would share in all the work, have a voice in decisions. I expect honesty and loyalty, and I will give the same. As for the more personal aspects of marriage, he paused. And for the first time, she saw uncertainty in his face. We can take time with that. Get to know each other first, make sure this is what we both want. Relief and something else, something warmer, flooded through Beatrice. That seems wise. There is a preacher in Fort Kearny. We could marry there before winter sets in properly, make it legal and proper. Finn's voice was gruff. Or if you wanted to wait, get to know me better first, I could build a partition in the loft, give you privacy. How long until winter? 6 weeks, maybe 8 if we are lucky. After that, travel gets dangerous. Beatrice thought of Philadelphia, of Charles's betrayal, of the emptiness that had filled her days. She looked at this rough man with his honest eyes and capable hands, at the solid cabin he had built alone, at the wild country outside that promised hardship and beauty in equal measure. And she thought that perhaps the greatest courage was not in waiting for certainty, but in choosing to trust again despite the risk. I will marry you, Finn Fletcher, as soon as it can be arranged. His hand, when he extended it to shake on the bargain, engulfed hers entirely. Then I will take you to Fort Kearny tomorrow, and we will see it done properly. That night Beatrice slept in the loft, surrounded by the unfamiliar sounds of wilderness and wind. Finn had given her his bed, a simple but comfortable frame with a cornhusk mattress and heavy quilts, insisting he would take a bedroll by the fire. She had protested, but he had been immovable, and she was too exhausted to argue long. Sleep came in fits and starts, her mind too full of change and possibility. Below she could hear Finn moving occasionally, tending the fire, his presence somehow reassuring despite her barely knowing him. When she finally drifted off, her dreams were full of mountain peaks and blue eyes and the sound of water running over stone. Morning brought the smell of cooking meat and fresh bread. Beatrice climbed down the ladder to find Finn at the stove, frying venison and warming what looked like biscuits in a covered pan. You cook? The surprise was evident in her voice. Before she could stop it, a hint of amusement touched his mouth. A man who cannot cook does not survive long alone. Sit, eat. We have a long ride ahead. The meal was simple but good, and Beatrice found herself eating with an appetite she had not felt in months. Finn ate with the focused efficiency of someone for whom food was fuel rather than pleasure, but she noticed him watching her between bites, his expression thoughtful. You will need different clothes, he said finally. Those skirts will not work for riding or for the kind of work we do here. Martha Henderson at the general store can help. I will pay for whatever you need. I cannot take your money. The protest was automatic, pride warring with necessity. You will be my wife. What I have is yours. His tone brooked no argument. Besides, it is practical. You cannot work in those city clothes. The ride to Fort Kearny took less time on horseback than it had by wagon, though Beatrice was acutely aware of sitting so close to Finn on his large roan gelding. He rode with the ease of someone born to it, one arm around her waist to steady her, his body warm and solid against her back. She tried not to think about it too much, about the strength in the muscles she could feel, about the way he smelled of pine and leather and wood smoke. Martha Henderson's eyes went wide when they walked into the general store together. Well, I see you found each other. Or did you come to town, Fletcher? She walked to my place yesterday. Finn's hand rested lightly on Beatrice's back, a gesture that felt both protective and claiming. We are here to see the preacher, and Beatrice needs proper clothes for mountain living. Married already? That was quick work. But Martha was smiling, her eyes approving as she looked between them. Come on, Beatrice, let me show you what we have. Fletcher, you can wait out here with Robert. This is women's business. An hour later, Beatrice emerged with 2 sturdy work dresses, split riding skirts, new boots, a heavy coat for winter, and enough undergarments and supplies to outfit her properly. Finn paid without blinking, adding other items she had not even thought of, a good knife in a sheath, a warm hat, thick gloves, wool stockings. You will need all of it, he said when she started to protest. Mountain winter is not like city winter. The preacher, a thin man named Reverend Thomas, married them in his small church with Martha and Robert as witnesses. The ceremony was brief and simple, just the essential words that bound 2 lives together before God and law. When Reverend Thomas told Finn he could kiss his bride, Beatrice's heart hammered in her chest. But Finn only leaned down and brushed his lips gently against her forehead, a gesture more tender than passionate, and she felt her eyes sting with unexpected emotion. "Welcome to the family," Martha said afterward, hugging Beatrice tightly. "You come to town when you can, let me know how you are doing, and Fletcher, you take care of her, you hear?" "I will." Finn's voice was solemn, a vow as serious as the ones he had just spoken. The ride back to the cabin felt different now, weighted with new reality. She was married to this man, this stranger, bound to him and to this wild country. Fear and hope tangled in her chest until she could not tell them apart. As if sensing her thoughts, Finn spoke quietly. "We will take this slow, Beatrice. You need time to adjust, to learn. There is no rush, thank you." The words were inadequate, but she meant them deeply. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that was exhausting and enlightening in equal measure. Finn proved to be a patient teacher, showing her the countless tasks that kept a mountain household running. She learned to split kindling properly, to bank a fire so it would last through the night, to identify which plants were edible and which were poison. He taught her to shoot, standing behind her to position the rifle against her shoulder, his hands steady on hers as she learned to sight and squeeze the trigger. "You need to be able to defend yourself in the cabin if I am away," he explained. "And fresh meat is always welcome." She learned to cure hides, a messy and smell-heavy process that made her stomach turn at first. Finn worked alongside her without comment, his own hands deep in the foul mixture as he showed her the techniques. There was something strangely intimate about the work, their hands occasionally brushing, his deep voice patient as he explained each step. Evenings were quieter. They would sit by the fire after supper, Finn mending equipment or working on some carving project while Beatrice sewed or read from the few books he owned. Sometimes they talked, hesitant conversations that slowly revealed more about each other. She learned that he had grown up on a farm in Ohio, the oldest of 6 children, and had joined the army at 20 to escape the suffocation of too many people in too small a space. "I saw my best friend die at Gettysburg," he said one night, staring into the flames. "Held him while he bled out, listened to him call for his mother. After that, I just wanted silence. Wanted to be somewhere the only blood spilled was clean, from hunting for food, not from hate." Beatrice found herself reaching for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. He looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face, and something passed between them that needed no words. She told him about her father, about learning to love books and numbers from him, about how lost she had felt after he died. "Charles seemed like a lifeline. Someone who wanted me, who would give me purpose again. I see now that I was trying to fill a hole that he could never fill, that no one else could fill for me. And now?" Finn's thumb stroked slowly across her knuckles. "Now I am learning that I can fill it myself, that I am stronger than I thought." She met his eyes. "And that maybe with the right person, it is not about filling holes but about building something new together." His smile was rare and beautiful. "I like that." October arrived with a cold snap that frosted the grass white each morning. Finn became a whirlwind of activity, checking and rechecking their supplies, hunting to stock the smokehouse, gathering the last of the wild plants that could be preserved for winter. Beatrice worked beside him, her body aching and her hands blistered, but feeling a satisfaction she had never known in her previous life. She was hauling water from the creek one afternoon when she heard Finn shout her name. The alarm in his voice had her dropping the buckets and running back to the cabin, fear clutching at her chest. She found him near the woodpile, rifle in hand, staring at something in the trees. "Bear," he said quietly. "Big one. It has been checking the smokehouse." Beatrice's mouth went dry. She had seen bear tracks, but never the animal itself. "What do? We show it we are not easy prey. Make noise, look big, do not run." He fired a shot into the air, the crack echoing off the mountains. "Get gone! This is our territory." For a long moment nothing happened. Then Beatrice saw movement, a massive dark shape shifting through the pines. The bear was enormous, shaggy with its winter coat growing in. It stood on its hind legs, easily 8 feet tall, and her heart stopped. Finn fired again, this time closer to the bear. "Go!" The bear dropped to all fours, swung its head back and forth as if considering, then turned and lumbered away into the forest. Finn kept the rifle up, his body tense until the animal had disappeared completely. "We will need to secure the smokehouse better," he said finally, lowering the weapon. "And you should not go far from the cabin without me until that bear decides to hibernate." Beatrice found she was shaking. "Are they always so big?" "That was a male, probably 400 pounds. They are preparing for winter." eating everything they can find. Our smoked meat would be tempting. He turned to look at her and concern filled his eyes. You are pale. Come inside, sit down. I am fine. But she let him guide her back to the cabin, let him press a cup of water into her hands. You did well, staying calm. Finn crouched before her chair, his big hands resting on her knees. This is part of living here, Beatrice. The danger is real. I need to know you can handle it. I can. She forced her voice steady. It was just shock. I will not fall apart. His hand came up to cup her face, rough palm gentle against her cheek. I know you will not. You are stronger than you think, Beatrice Crawford Fletcher. The use of her married name, the tenderness in his touch, the warmth in his eyes, all combined to make her breath catch. Without thinking, she leaned forward and kissed him, a brief press of lips that tasted of surprise and possibility. When she pulled back, Finn's eyes were wide but not displeased. Beatrice, we are married, she said softly. And I trust you, Finn. I think I have trusted you from the moment I saw you crossing that clearing. Is that foolish? No. His voice was rough. No, it is not foolish. Then he was kissing her back, properly this time, his mouth warm and sure against hers. One hand tangled in her hair while the other pulled her closer, and Beatrice felt heat flood through her body, want and need, and something deeper that she did not dare name yet. They broke apart, breathing hard, and Finn rested his forehead against hers. I have wanted to do that for days, wanted you. But I did not want to push, did not want you to feel obligated. I do not feel obligated. I feel she struggled for the words. Like I am finally choosing something for myself, not out of fear or loneliness, but because I want it. I want you. His kiss this time was deeper, more demanding, and Beatrice lost herself in it, in the feel of his strong arms around her, in the warmth of his body against hers. When he lifted her and carried her to the ladder, she wrapped her arms around his neck and did not protest. The loft was cool in the afternoon light, but they created their own heat. Finn was gentle despite his strength, his hands reverent as they learned her body, and Beatrice gave herself over to sensation and trust. He treated her like something precious even as passion rose between them, and when he finally made her his wife in truth, she felt the last pieces of her broken heart begin to knit back together. Afterward, they lay tangled in the quilts, Finn's arms around her and her head on his broad chest. Beatrice traced idle patterns on his skin, marveling at the bands of muscle, the scars that told stories of a hard life. No regrets? Finn's voice rumbled under her ear. She tilted her head to look at him. This feels right in a way nothing with Charles ever did. I think my heart knew before my head did. Good. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Because I am keeping you, Beatrice, you are mine now, and I am yours. Possessive mountain man, she teased, but the words warmed her through. Absolutely. He rolled them so he was looking down at her, his eyes intense. I waited 8 years for someone real, someone worth sharing this life with. Now that I have you, I am not letting go. The weeks leading to winter passed in a blur of work and growing intimacy. They fell into an easy partnership, anticipating each other's needs, working side by side from dawn to dusk. Beatrice's hands toughened, her body grew stronger, and she found herself falling in love with both the man and the life they were building together. Finn proved to be full of small tenderness that contrasted beautifully with his rough exterior. He would wake her with gentle kisses and hot coffee. He carved her a beautiful comb from bone and antler for her birthday in November. When she struggled with a particular task, he never mocked or grew impatient, just showed her again with quiet encouragement. You learn fast, he told her one evening as she successfully skinned a rabbit he had trapped. Faster than I expected. Good teacher, she replied, grinning at him. And I am motivated. I want to be a true partner, not dead weight. You could never be dead weight. His hand found hers, sticky with blood though it was. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Beatrice. The first serious snow came in late November, a storm that dropped 2 feet in a single night and buried the world in white silence. Beatrice woke to find the cabin transformed into a cocoon, the windows frosted over, the only sound the crack and pop of wood in the stove. Welcome to winter, Finn said, pulling her close under the quilts. We will be spending a lot of time inside for the next few months. It should have felt like a prison, but instead it felt like a gift. They had each other, a warm shelter, and plenty of food. Finn taught her to play chess with a set he had carved from wood. She read to him from his small collection of books, her voice filling the cabin with stories and poetry. They made love frequently, learning each other's bodies with growing confidence and passion, and Beatrice found herself happier than she had ever been. I barely remember Philadelphia, she said one evening, tucked against Finn's side before the fire. It feels like another life. Any regrets about that life? Only that I wasted time with Charles when I could have been finding you sooner. She tilted her head to kiss his jaw. Do you regret advertising for a wife? Only that I did not do it years ago. His arms tightened around her, though maybe I needed those years alone to appreciate what I have now. The winter passed in a rhythm of hard work and quiet joy. They ventured out on clear days to check traps and hunt, Beatrice learning to move through the snow on the wooden shoes Finn called snowshoes. The world was breathtakingly beautiful, pristine white, broken only by the dark slash of trees and the tracks of wild creatures. She saw elk and deer, wolves in the distance, eagles soaring overhead, and felt a connection to the land that she never could have imagined back in the city. But there were hard days, too. Days when the wind howled like a living thing, and they huddled by the fire, listening to the cabin creak and groan. Days when the cold was so intense that water froze within minutes of being drawn from the creek. A day when Finn fell through thin ice and had to be hauled out, his lips blue and his body shaking violently, and Beatrice spent hours warming him by the fire and in their bed terrified she might lose him to the cold. I am fine, he kept saying through chattering teeth. I just need to warm up. You scared me. She held him tighter, her own body heat and the heavy quilts finally stopping his shivering. Do not do that again. I will try not to. His hand found her face in the darkness. Thank you for taking care of me. We are partners, remember? You take care of me, I take care of you. Best partnership I have ever had, he murmured, already drifting towards sleep. Spring arrived slowly, teasing them with warm days followed by sudden storms. But gradually the snow retreated, the creek ran high with meltwater, and the world turned green again. Beatrice found herself nauseous and exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with the work, and when Martha Henderson confirmed what she suspected during a trip to Fort Kearny in April, she felt joy and terror in equal measure. You are maybe 2 months along, Martha said, her experienced hands gentle on Beatrice's belly. Probably conceived in early March. How do you feel besides the sickness? Scared, Beatrice admitted. I know nothing about babies or childbirth, and we are so far from help. You have months to learn, and Finn will take good care of you. Martha squeezed her hand. I will come up before your time, stay with you through the birth. You will not be alone. Finn was waiting outside the store, and the look on Beatrice's face must have told him something, because he was at her side in an instant. What is wrong? You sick? I am pregnant. She watched his face, unsure how he would react. For a moment he just stared at her. Then a slow smile spread across his features, transforming him into someone younger, almost boyish in his joy. A baby? We are having a baby? You are happy? Relief flooded through her. Happy? Beatrice, He swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around despite being in the middle of town. This is the best news. This is everything. The ride home was full of plans and dreams. Finn wanted to build a cradle, needed to enlarge the garden to ensure enough food, would need to hunt more to lay in extra meat. Beatrice laughed at his enthusiasm, touching his face to slow the torrent of words. We have time, she said gently. Months yet, we can prepare carefully. I just want everything perfect for you for the baby. His hand rested on her still flat belly, reverent. I want to give you both the world you already have. She covered his hand with hers. You gave me a home and a future when I had nothing. You gave me your love and your trust. That is more than enough. The summer was busy beyond belief. Finn threw himself into preparations with single-minded focus, building a beautiful cradle from pine and cedar, expanding the garden until it took up a large section of cleared land, hunting and fishing until the smokehouse was packed. Beatrice worked as much as her changing body allowed, marveling at the life growing inside her, at the way Finn would stop whatever he was doing to press his hand to her belly when the baby moved. Strong, he would murmur, his face soft with wonder. Already so strong. In August, Martha arrived as promised, settling into the cabin with the ease of someone used to frontier midwifery. She brought supplies and knowledge, teaching Beatrice what to expect, showing her how to care for a newborn. You are healthy and strong, Martha assured her. I do not anticipate problems, but I will be here until I am sure both you and the baby are well. The labor started on a cool September evening, almost exactly a year after Beatrice had arrived in Nebraska. The pain was unlike anything she had experienced, waves that built and crested and left her gasping. Finn held her hand, his face tight with worry, his strength anchoring her through the worst moments. You are doing beautifully, Martha encouraged. Not much longer now, I can see the head. When the baby finally came, wailing and red-faced, Beatrice collapsed back against Finn's chest, tears streaming down her face. Is it okay? Is the baby okay? You have a son, Martha said, smiling as she cleaned the infant, a big, healthy son. Finn's arms tightened around Beatrice, and she felt his tears wet against her temple. A son, he whispered. We have a son. They named him Benjamin, and he proved to have his father's dark hair and his mother's eyes. Finn was besotted from the first moment, handling the tiny body with exquisite care, his big hands impossibly gentle. Beatrice watched him walk the floor with the baby at 3 in the morning, murmuring stories about the mountains and the stars, and fell even more deeply in love with her rough mountain man. Thank you, Finn said one night, the baby asleep between them in the big bed, for coming here, for taking a chance on me, for giving me this family. You are everything I did not know I needed. Thank you for being honest in your advertisement, Beatrice replied, touching his face. For offering truth instead of pretty lies, for showing me what real love looks like. The years that followed were full and hard and beautiful. Benjamin grew into a sturdy boy who loved the mountains as much as his father. When he was 2, Beatrice gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, who had her father's blue eyes and adventurous spirit. 2 years after that came another son, Thomas, who was quieter but observant, always watching and learning. The cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family, Finn building additional rooms with the same careful craftsmanship he brought to everything. The children learned to help with chores as soon as they were able, growing up strong and capable in the wilderness. Fort Kearny saw the Fletcher family 4 or 5 times a year, and Martha Henderson delighted in watching the children grow. You made the right choice, Martha told Beatrice during one visit, watching Benjamin, now 7, help his father load supplies. Look at what you have built together. I know. Beatrice's hand rested on her swollen belly, another baby due in a few months. I could never have imagined this life back in Philadelphia, but I would not trade it for anything. Finn caught her eye from across the street and smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that still made her heart skip. He handed Benjamin the reins and crossed to her, his hand finding hers automatically. Ready to go home? He asked. Always. She leaned into his solid warmth. As long as home is wherever you are. On the ride back to the cabin, with the children chattering in the wagon bed and the mountains rising blue and beautiful ahead, Beatrice thought about the path that had brought her here. Charles Whitmore's betrayal, the desperate answer to a wilderness advertisement, the terrified journey to Fort, meeting Finn Fletcher for the first time, all rough edges and honest eyes, the leap of faith it had taken to trust again, to marry a stranger, to build a life in these wild mountains. She thought about the woman she had been, broken and ashamed, her savings gone and her faith in people shattered. And she thought about the woman she had become, strong and capable, surrounded by love and purpose. The mountains had tested her in ways Philadelphia never could, had demanded everything she had to give, but they had also given back 100-fold. What are you thinking about? Finn asked quietly. About how losing everything led me to find everything I actually needed. She squeezed his hand. About how the worst thing that ever happened to me led directly to the best, no regrets, not a single one. She kissed his cheek. You are my home. Finn Fletcher, you and our children in these mountains. Thank you for placing that advertisement. Thank you for taking a chance on a city girl who knew nothing about wilderness living. Thank you for answering it. His arm came around her, pulling her close despite the bulk of the baby between them. For being brave enough to start over. For choosing me, for loving me, for building this life with me. You are the strongest person I have ever known, Beatrice. That night, after the children were asleep and they lay tangled together in their bed, Finn traced patterns on her skin and whispered plans for the future. Another room for the new baby, perhaps a larger barn, maybe even a few cattle if they could afford it. Beatrice listened and contributed her own ideas, their voices quiet in the darkness, weaving dreams together the way they had woven their lives. Outside, the wind moved through the pines with a sound like ocean waves, and somewhere in the distance a wolf howled at the moon. The fire crackled in the hearth below, and the cabin creaked with the settling sounds of a well-loved home. This was her life now, Beatrice thought, not the life she had planned or expected, but the one she had found when everything else fell away. Charles Whitmore had stolen her money and her trust, had left her with nothing but desperation and shame. But in doing so, he had inadvertently given her the greatest gift, the courage to answer an advertisement for a wilderness wife, to travel 1,000 miles into the unknown, to meet a mountain man named Finn Fletcher who had offered her truth instead of lies, partnership instead of possession, real love instead of pretty words. She thought of that young woman standing on the platform at Fort Kearny, clutching an empty reticule and a crumpled advertisement, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. If she could speak to that woman now, she would tell her that the fear was worth it, that the risk was worth it, that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what you were meant to have all along. "I love you," she whispered to Finn, her hand over his heart, feeling the steady beat beneath her palm. "I love you too." His arms tightened around her. "My brave, beautiful wife. My partner, my heart." And there, in their mountain cabin, with their children sleeping nearby, and a new baby growing beneath her heart, surrounded by the wild beauty of Nebraska's hills and the fierce, tender love of a man who had taught her what truth meant, Beatrice Crawford Fletcher finally understood what it meant to be home. The years continued to unfold in their rhythm of seasons and growth. The fourth baby, another daughter they named Emma, arrived on a snowy January morning, making her entrance into the world with a powerful cry that suggested she would be a force to be reckoned with. Finn laughed through his tears as he held her, this tiny creature who already had him wrapped around her finger. Benjamin grew into a young man who was the image of his father, tall and broad-shouldered with the same blue eyes and capable hands. He trapped his first beaver at 10, shot his first elk at 12, and by 14 was as competent in the wilderness as any grown man. But he also had his mother's love of books and learning, spending winter evenings reading everything he could find by the fire. Sarah was wild and fearless, climbing trees and running through the mountains with the abandon of someone who knew no fear. She could track game almost as well as her father by the time she was 10, and she had a way with animals that bordered on magical. Even the most skittish creatures seemed to trust her. Thomas was the thinker, always working out problems in his head, figuring out better ways to do things. At 8, he designed a new trap mechanism that caught twice as many rabbits. At 10, he improved the irrigation system for the garden. Finn would watch him with proud amazement, shaking his head at the boy's ingenuity. Emma, the baby, grew into a cheerful child who seemed determined to befriend everyone and everything she encountered. She followed her siblings everywhere, chattering constantly, and had them all under her spell. The cabin had grown into a proper homestead with multiple buildings and a substantial garden plot. Finn had even managed to acquire a small herd of cattle, and the income from furs and occasionally selling beef allowed them a comfortable if still hard-working life. Fort Kearny changed too over the years, growing from a rough frontier outpost into a more established town. The railroad brought more people, more goods, more connection to the wider world. Martha Henderson grew older but remained a fierce friend, taking particular delight in the Fletcher children and never failing to remind Beatrice how far she had come. "Remember when you stepped off that train, looking like a stiff wind could blow you over?" Martha said one summer day when Beatrice brought the children to town. "Now look at you. Strong as an ox, 4 beautiful children, and a life most women would envy." "I remember being terrified," Beatrice admitted, watching Emma try to convince her father to buy candy at the store. "I thought I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Instead, you found exactly what you needed." Martha squeezed her hand. "That is the thing about life, is it not? Sometimes the wrong path leads you to the right place." One autumn evening, when Benjamin was 16 and Emma was 6, a stranger arrived at the cabin just as night was falling. Finn answered the knock on the door with his rifle in hand. The children gathered behind him. Beatrice came to stand at his shoulder, and her heart nearly stopped. Charles Whitmore stood on their porch, older and harder looking than she remembered, his clothes dusty from travel. For a moment she could not breathe, could not think, her mind flooded with memories of betrayal and loss. "Hello, Beatrice." His voice was the same, smooth and pleasant. "I heard you had done well for yourself out here. I wanted to see if it was true." Finn's body had gone tense as stone beside her, and his voice when he spoke was deadly calm. "You need to leave. Now I just want to talk to her, just for a moment." Charles's eyes moved to Beatrice. "Please, I owe you an apology. You owe her a lot more than that." Finn's hand tightened on the rifle. "You stole from her, abandoned her, left her with nothing. An apology does not begin to cover that debt. I know, and I have regretted it every day since." Charles looked directly at Beatrice. "I was a fool and a coward. The money is long gone, gambled and wasted. I have nothing to offer but my regrets. But I wanted you to know that you deserved better than what I gave you." Beatrice felt Finn's questioning glance, felt her children watching her. She looked at this man who had once broken her so completely, and felt nothing but a distant pity. He looked diminished somehow, smaller than her memories, worn down by whatever choices had brought him here. "You are right, I did deserve better," she said clearly, "and I found it. I found a man who tells me the truth, who works beside me as a true partner, who loves me and our children with everything he has. I found a life that is hard and real and beautiful. Your stealing from me was the best thing you ever did, because it forced me to leave Philadelphia and find what I was meant to have all along." Charles flinched as if she had struck him. "I am glad for you then, I truly am. You need to leave now," Finn said again, his voice brooking no argument. "And do not come back. If I see you near my family again, we will have a different kind of conversation." Charles nodded, his shoulders slumped, and turned away. They watched him disappear into the darkness, the sound of his horse fading into the night. When he was gone, Finn closed the door and turned to Beatrice, his eyes searching her face. "Are you all right? I am fine." And she was, she realized with surprise. There was no pain, no anger, just a strange kind of closure. "He does not matter anymore, Finn. He has not mattered in years. You are my life now, you and our children." He pulled her close and the children surrounded them, a tight knot of family and love. "He was a fool to let you go," Finn murmured against her hair. "And you were wise to take a chance on me." She pulled back to look at her family, at the faces she loved more than anything in the world. This is what matters. This is everything. The incident with Charles became just another story in their family history, one that illustrated how far they had come and how strong their foundation was. The children grew and thrived, each finding their own path while remaining connected to the land and the life their parents had built. Benjamin eventually married a girl from Fort Kearny, a sensible young woman named Alice who took to mountain life with the same determination Beatrice had shown years before. They built their own cabin a few miles from Finn and Beatrice's place, close enough to help but far enough to establish their own family. Sarah, true to her wild nature, married a scout who traveled the territories, and they lived a nomadic life that suited her adventurous spirit. But she always came home to the mountains when she could, bringing stories of far places and different peoples. Thomas took his love of mechanics and innovation to Denver, where he worked with mining equipment and eventually started his own business. He visited regularly, bringing his wife and children to experience the mountains their father had grown up in. Emma, the baby, surprised them all by deciding to become a teacher. She established a small school in Fort Kearny, determined to give other children the love of learning her mother had instilled in her. She never married, claiming she was too busy shaping young minds, but she was happy and fulfilled and surrounded by community. As the years passed and Beatrice and Finn grew older, they found themselves with time to simply be together in ways the hard years of building and raising children had not allowed. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set behind the mountains, their hands clasped together, comfortable in the silence that came from knowing each other completely. "Do you ever miss Philadelphia?" Finn asked one such evening when they were both in their 50s and their hair was threaded with silver. "Never." Beatrice did not even have to think about it. "That life was not really mine. This is mine, all of it. The hard work and the beauty, the struggles and the triumphs. I chose this, chose you, and I have never regretted it for a moment. I chose well too." He lifted her hand to his lips. "The best thing I ever did was place that advertisement. The second best was recognizing the treasure that showed up on my doorstep." "Treasure?" She laughed. "I was a broken mess. You were brave and honest and stronger than you knew. You still are." His eyes, still that startling blue despite the years, held hers with the same intensity that had captured her heart decades ago. "You are the great love of my life, Beatrice Fletcher. Everything good I have comes from you. And everything good I have comes from us," she corrected gently. "From the life we built together, from the choices we made as partners. Neither of us could have done this alone." They watched their youngest grandchild, Benjamin's daughter Mary, chase butterflies in the meadow below the cabin. The girl's laughter carried on the wind, pure and joyful, and Beatrice felt her heart swell with gratitude for this life, for this family, for the man beside her who had shown her what real love meant. When Finn died at 73, peacefully in his sleep after a life fully lived, Beatrice mourned deeply but without regret. They had been given nearly 40 years together, had built something lasting and true, had created a family that would carry their values forward into the future. He had been her partner, her love, her home, and she had been his. The children wanted her to move to town, to live with one of them where she could be more comfortable and less isolated. But Beatrice refused. This was her home, the place where she had found herself and her strength, where every corner held memories of the life she and Finn had shared. She was not about to leave it now. She lived another 12 years in the mountain cabin, visiting her children and grandchildren, but always returning to the place that had shaped her. She tended the garden Finn had expanded, walked the trails they had hiked together, sat in the chair he had made for her, and watched the seasons turn. On a clear September morning, almost 50 years to the day after she had first arrived in Fort Kearny, Beatrice Crawford Fletcher died in her sleep. Her children found her in the big bed she had shared with Finn, a peaceful expression on her weathered face, her hand resting on the pillow where he used to lay beside her. They buried her next to Finn on the hillside above the cabin, where the view stretched across miles of mountains and forest, wild and beautiful and free. The whole family gathered, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a testament to the love that had started with a desperate woman answering an advertisement and a lonely man seeking honest companionship. Benjamin, now an old man himself, stood before the grave and told the story one more time, the story that had become legend in their family, about a woman who had been betrayed and left with nothing, who had found the courage to travel into the wilderness seeking truth instead of comfort, about a mountain man who had been honest enough to advertise for exactly what he wanted and wise enough to recognize it when it arrived, about two people who had built something real and lasting in a harsh land, who had created a family and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. They taught us what love really means, he said, his voice carrying across the gathering. Not pretty words or easy promises, but hard work and honest partnership. Choosing each other every day, through good times and bad, building something that would outlast them both. That is their gift to us, and we honor it by living the same way. As the family dispersed back to their various lives, the mountains stood eternal and unchanging. Witness to all the small human dramas played out in their shadow, the cabin remained, maintained by descendants who understood its importance, a reminder of what two people could build together when they face life with courage and honesty. And if sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light slanted golden through the pines, visitors to the old Fletcher place claimed they could hear laughter on the wind or catch the scent of wood smoke from a long, cold fire, well, that was just the mountains keeping their secrets. Some love stories do not end with death, but continue on in the land they shaped and the family they created, woven into the fabric of a place until they become part of its very essence. The advertisement that had started it all, preserved carefully by the family, hung framed in the cabin's main room. Seeking honest woman for companionship in marriage. Must be strong of spirit, mountain living. Write to Finn Fletcher, care of Fort Kearny. Simple words that had changed two lives completely, that had taken a woman who had lost everything and a man who lived in isolation and brought them together to create something neither could have achieved alone. It was a love story, but not the kind told in romance novels with their easy plots and convenient resolutions. It was the kind forged in hard work and honest communication, in facing difficulties together and building something real from the ground up. It was a love that acknowledged the harshness of life while choosing to believe in goodness anyway. That took two broken pieces and fit them together into something stronger than either had been alone. And perhaps that, in the end, was the greatest legacy of Beatrice and Finn Fletcher. Not the land they tamed or the children they raised or the years they spent together, but the proof that real love, the kind that lasts and sustains and transforms, is built not on pretty words or easy passion, but on truth and partnership and the daily choice to stand together against whatever comes. Their story became a touchstone for their descendants, a reminder when times were hard that courage and honesty and love could overcome any obstacle. When faced with difficult choices, they would ask themselves what Beatrice and Finn would have done, and, more often than not, they found their answer in the values those two had lived by. Face the truth, work hard, be honest, choose love. The mountains remembered, the cabin stood, and the family grew, and somewhere in the fabric of that wild Nebraska country, woven into the wind and stone and water, the love story of a jilted woman and a mountain man continued on, as lasting and true as the land itself. It was a story of lost transformed into gain, of betrayal that led to trust, of ending that became beginning. It was proof that sometimes the worst thing that can happen is actually the door opening to the best thing waiting on the other side. If you are only brave enough to step through. Beatrice had stepped through that door 50 years ago, frightened and desperate and alone. She had found Finn Fletcher waiting, solid and true and honest. and together they had built a life that was everything either of them could have wanted. They had faced hardship and danger, celebrated joy and triumph, raised a family and created a legacy. They had loved deeply and truly, partners in every sense of the word, and their story would continue on through the generations they had started. In the end, that was all anyone could hope for: a life lived fully, love given and received freely, and a legacy that would outlast mortality. Beatrice and Finn Fletcher had achieved all three, and in doing so, had proven that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, found when you are brave enough to take a chance on truth, instead of settling for comfortable lies. Their cabin stood as a monument to that truth, and the mountains kept their story safe for anyone wise enough to listen.